There are many ways you can improve your home, starting with how you protect it. In today's home improvement, I learned all about sump pumps. Good morning. I am with Matt Brendel, and he is with Capital Plumbing. Thanks so much for having me.
No problem.
Okay, so hot topic these days is sump pumps.
Oh yeah, some pumps in basements getting flooded, right?
Flooding, yes, and lots of water. And I've heard multiple people recently that were like, my sump pump stopped working, or it wasn't working properly.
Right.
And so that's when they had the water come is because their pump wasn't working. So what are some tips that you could give our viewers about just like what to look for?
So many people during these rainstorms are saying that their pump is actually failing during the rainstorm. Well, the problem is there's a good chance that it wasn't working before the storm started. So basically, just kind of a maintenance deal. Checking your pump 3-4 times a year to make sure it's actually working.
How would you do that?
Yeah, so if you're able, grab a couple buckets of water.
Okay.
If you know where your pump's at, take your lid off your sump pump or your sump pit and basically dump water in there until your float's activated.
Okay.
And then obviously, if it brings the water level down, it's working good. If you find that the water level is higher than it should be and it's still not pumping out, then it's kind of a red flag to saying that your pump needs to be replaced, most likely.
Okay, so let's take a step back for just a second, because also like I've never really looked at my sump pump, and I'm sure many people haven't, but when you talk about the float, like, so water's coming in here, right? This guy, like, is like a buoy that just kind of floats up.
Yep, this is a vertical switch style sump pump. Basically, once the water level rises and it hits the switch, it'll actually suck that water down until it comes to a level to where it doesn't need to be pumping no more. So, and then on this guy right here,
these are different. This one's real heavy.
Yep, this is a little a higher flow pump. This is a tethered flow switch. Basically, instead of being vertical, it actually will rise with the water level. Okay. And once it meets...
Did you hear the click?
Yeah. Once it clicks, it'll bring that water level down until it's satisfied. Once you found that your pump still works, a lot of times with these groundwater conditions, it can have high amounts of, calcium, all that sediment. Sometimes these vertical switches, especially in the vertical switch style, they can actually get built up right here. So even if the pump's working and that float, meets the level to where it should start pumping, if it's bound up right here, it's not going to work. So scraping it off, just doing a kind of visual inspection. And another thing too is you want to make sure you don't have any like debris that has fallen into your sump pit, because sometimes with kids or pets, if there's something like a stuffed animal there, it could actually block your tethered float, and then it can't go and it can't pump your water. Same with this guy right here.
Well, something I had asked earlier is like, doesn't every home come with a sump pump?
Right. No, if you build a house, they're not required to have a sump pump. Okay. There's going to be a pit in there. It's going to be ready to have a pump installed, but they're not required. The home builder is not required. The homeowner that you buy from are not required to have a pump in there.
So I know this one's a little heavier, right? And what is the difference between these two?
Yeah, so the biggest thing is a vertical style switch is going to be a lot more contained compared to this tethered float. Whereas, you could almost put this in a 5-gallon bucket. Okay. And this guy here is going to take a little more room to work.
Circumference.
Granted, a new home, sump pit, either one will work. Most of your time, your float, the tethered float style, is actually going to pump more water than your gallon per minute, this is still 30 gallons per minute, which is pretty crazy. Yep. So that's the biggest thing. So this is handy because you don't have to worry about 2 cords. This has just got one. It's gonna be cheaper than a cast iron one, but this is twice the pump that this is. I got 2 different styles here.
So how often should you replace them?
I would say if it gets highly used, I would say for sure every 5 years. Yeah, so if these things are running often and constantly, I would say more often than not, because what's a couple $100 than calling your insurance and having peace of mind's worth a lot. So obviously, if you rarely have water in your pit, these can run for many years, like 10, 15, 20 years. But the biggest thing is to check them 3-4 times a year to make sure they're working, you know.
I paused when you said 5 years because I was kind of doing the math in my head. Like, we've been in our house for like 10 years.
Yeah, and I would say maybe 5 years if
and
it's
it
a
runs
high.
a lot.
Yeah.
We maybe want to check it.
And it's, you know, like I said, a couple $100 for a pump, for a higher end pump.
Yeah.
And that's a lot cheaper and, you know, peace of mind and to make sure you know it's working, you know. So
Right.
that's the biggest thing.
And this has been Home Improvement brought to you by Aero Service Team.
For more information, call Matt at Capital Plumbing, 701-751-4774.